This conference will now be recorded.
All right, well, we will get started here. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. I'm seeing some people logging on now. This is our MWEE Practitioners Webinar Series. My name is Elise Trelligan. I work for the NOAA Chesapeake Bay Office and support the Bay Program Education Work Group. As you know, this is part of a series of MWEE webinars that are hosted on a monthly basis, and we cover topics related to designing and implementing meaningful watershed educational experiences, as well as unique science content that can serve as the basis for those MWEE investigations. This is our last webinar of 2020, and we're already kicking out a great lineup of what's in store for 2021, starting with the topic of green infrastructure, which will feature Juliana Greenberg from the EPA. And I think this will be a really compelling topic for the community, especially given the role that BMPs have oftentimes within the meaningful watershed educational experience and that kind of action component. That webinar is going to be on January 20th at 3:30, and we'll have a kind of save the date slide at the end of the presentation today. But that being said, if you have any ideas for webinars that you want to see in the future, feel free to reach out to us, drop them in the chat. We're really happy to kind of have the ideas that you're interested in so that we can make sure that this is really serving your needs. Today, we're really excited to have 4 wonderful women joining us today: Mary from Mayo, Riley and Holly from NWF, and Hema from James M. Bennett High School, who are going to be sharing with us as what they see as some of the unique opportunities for how sustainable schools and MWEEs align and how they can really support each other. From my perspective, there's a lot of opportunity here that's kind of been untapped in our community to date, so I'm excited to dive into this. But before I turn it over to Mary, I'll just remind us of a couple of ground rules here. Best practice for webinars, please mute your mics. Krista and I will be working behind the scenes in case that's a challenge for anyone. And feel free to shut your video off if you want to throughout the course of the presentation. We'll be stopping at various points throughout the presentation to take questions. So if anything comes to mind, feel free to type that right into the chat and we'll be able to pitch that to our presenters. And this presentation is being recorded, as you probably heard at the beginning here, and all of our webinars are archived on the Bay Program education page under the MWEE Practitioner Webinar Series, which you probably already have in your email. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Mary to take us away.
Great, thanks, Elise. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about the Green Schools Program and the Sustainable Schools relationship to MWEEs. So let's get started. All right, so Elise already introduced ourselves, but we're going to introduce ourselves again. So my name is Mary Westland, and I work for the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education, or MAO short, and I'm the program coordinator there. Riley and Holly, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Holly Gallagher. I am the Senior Manager for Education and Community Conservation with National Wildlife Federation's Mid-Atlantic Regional Center. It's a mouthful. And I run our Eco Schools program here in the Mid-Atlantic region.
I'm Riley Cassidy, and I am the Chesapeake Conservation Corps member with the National Wildlife Federation's Mid-Atlantic region, and I'm supporting Holly in her Eco Schools work.
Great, thank you both. All right, so we'd like to hear from you as well. So we have some polls and surveys that we're going to do throughout our webinar today. And if you can, go to slido.com on either a mobile phone or a second screen, or whichever is best for you. A second device usually works better. And go to slido.com and enter hashtag M129. And once we activate the poll, you should see the questions. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide here, and the information is on the next slide as well. All right, so we want you to tell us where you are from. So if you're a formal, informal educator, school administrator, nonprofit, or other. Looks like we have a lot of informal educators today who are joining us. So I gave it about 10 more seconds. All right, well, that's good to know. So we have 44% of everyone who's on here is informal. Nice. And then we have some nonprofit partners, government agencies, and formal educators with us today. So thank you for joining us. Let's continue. And Holly, I'm going to let you talk about the partnership that you and I and Mayo and NWF have.
Sure, thanks, Mary. So for anyone who's not familiar with the relationship between Eco Schools USA and Maryland Green Schools Program, Eco Schools is an international green schools program, which we're going to talk a bit more about later in the presentation. But the way we work closely here in Maryland is that some schools choose to use Eco Schools as a stepping stone to getting to the Maryland Green Schools recognition. And they can do that by working on one theme or pathway at a time. So they could work, for instance, just on recycling or something to do with watershed education and get an award through Eco Schools. So they can use that and then towards their Maryland Green Schools application. Some schools, however, choose to become a green school first and then actually use Eco Schools program as an international additional recognition that they're able to put another feather in their cap, basically, and use it as a carrot to keep the school moving forward and implementing and refining sustainability initiatives. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who wasn't familiar with our partnership. And we'll talk a little bit more about both programs and about how they relate to MWEEs during the next hour.
Great, thank you, Holly. Thanks for getting us started. All right, so we want to hear from you again. So do you represent or work with an eco school or a green school? So again, it's slido.com at #M129. This will help us to understand who we're presenting to today. Looks like most people do not work at or with an eco or green school. So this is a great place for you to be today. So to learn about both programs and about that relationship to MWEEs. Great. And one more question. Does your school or organization have or support a MWEE? Looks like 95, almost over 90% have MWEEs. So that's great. So you're going to see that relationship between the two programs and MWEEs today. All right, awesome. Let's get started. Before I start, I'd like to introduce very quickly my colleague, Laura Collard. She has just joined briefly. So she is the Executive Director at Mayo, and I wanted to just introduce her very quickly as she just joined us as well.
Hi, thanks Mary and Holly. I'm really glad to be here this afternoon and excited for this opportunity to share the connections between MWEE and green schools and eco schools. So thank you for that, and I'll go. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started and start talking about the Maryland Green Schools program. So the Maryland Green Schools program is a nationally recognized program that promotes environmental stewardship and environmental sustainability and empowers youth to make changes. And we currently have 656 green schools across Maryland and 42 green centers that support those schools. And if we can make sure that everybody's on mute, that'd be great. Then we don't have any background noise as people are presenting. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to continue. So these are our top 6 reasons for becoming a Maryland Green School. So we all know that spending time in nature has been proven to improve academic success, and green schools across Maryland have demonstrated improvement on test scores. And the Green School Program was started in 1999 and is nationally recognized. And in 2019, the Maryland Green Schools Act was passed and calls for 50% of all schools in Maryland to be green schools. We're currently at 31%, so we have a bit of work to do. But we are positive about that, and we know it's going to happen. And the Green School Program increases school spirit and builds community. So the next three reasons here at the bottom of the screen are directly tied to implementing MWEEs at a school. It includes staff, so the Green Schools Program includes staff and student sustainability efforts, like improving schoolyard habitats, reducing waste, and conserving energy. And there's an emphasis on environmental literacy through hands-on learning that demonstrates how we are all connected to each other, the Chesapeake Bay, and beyond. And lastly, through the Green Schools Program, students become empowered to make sustainable changes and in their school, and they become lifelong stewards. So if you're a green school or thinking about becoming a green school, you're likely already implementing the essential elements of MWEEs. And as we saw in our poll, many of you are already doing MWEEs. So you are already on the road to becoming a green school or an eco school. And some of those things that you might already be doing are issue, definition, outdoor field experiences, synthesis and conclusions, and stewardship and civic action, which are those essential elements of MWEEs. And to become a Maryland Green School, the application focuses on three objectives. So objective one focuses on systemic sustainability. And one component of objective one is environmental issue instruction. So schools need to demonstrate that outdoor environmental-based instruction is occurring through hands-on authentic lessons. And objective two focuses on student-driven sustainability practices. So for this objective, we ask schools to document student environmental actions and demonstrate that students are planning and implementing and leading environmental practices. And for objective three, the application focuses on community partnerships that are important for schools to become successful in building lifelong or long-term sustainable practices. So let's dig a little deeper into objective two. So these are the categories in objective two that could be part of a MWEE in some way. So by using the ELM or the environmental literacy model, you can look at these objectives and brainstorm ideas to facilitate a conversation about a MWEE plan. So as I'm reading these questions in the chat box, if you can share some of your thoughts, that would be awesome. We'd like to get some brainstorming fun in here in the next few seconds or minutes. All right, you ready? So what are the local issues, problems, or phenomena you could explore using these objectives? So go ahead and put some of that thinking in the chat box. And Elise, if you can help me monitor that, that'd be awesome. I'm not sure if anyone's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
So native versus non-native, climate change and sea level rise as a phenomenon, runoff or erosion. A lot of people are echoing that runoff piece.
Great.
Enhancing water quality for forage. Brian is making a reference to our last MWEE Practitioner webinar. I love it. Food waste, invasive species, reforestation, habitat restoration. So a lot of great phenomena in here.
Great. Awesome. One more question to quiz you all. So what environments related field trips or outdoor assets or other resources exist at your school or site related to these objectives? It's like we have outdoor classrooms, waste stream analysis, nice. Food sheds, farm-based education sites, C&O Canal, nice. The Arboretum, very cool. Awesome. Keep those thoughts coming. I know I'm on a time frame, so I'm going to keep going. All right. So here's an even closer look at the Maryland Green Schools application objectives and its alignment to MWEEs. So for objective 1, we encourage applicants to describe the MWEEs that they're doing at each grade level. And that can be integrated into your application. As part of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement, all students have to participate in a MWEE during each grade band, 1 in elementary, 1 in middle, and 1 in high school. And many of you here know and are already doing that MWEE. And the supporting practices in MWEE also align with Objective 1 through curriculum and instruction, school-wide behavior changes, and systemic partnerships and teacher support. For example, staff can also complete the MWEE 101 course as part of the professional development component of this objective. And for Objective 2, if your school has completed a MWEE, the 4 essential elements can be covered in this objective. And then going on to Objective 3, community partnerships can tie directly into the local context of the MWEE. Right? And then when schools submit a successful application, they become part of the Maryland Green Schools Network. They are recognized and celebrated for their accomplishments with a green school flag and a plaque. We also have a youth summit in May that takes place in person when we can, and probably virtually this year. But schools reapply every 4 years, and the green work being done in these schools actually will impact thousands of students every year. And this will lead to future generations of students who create a strong, sustainable culture throughout Maryland. And this is an even closer look at the impact Maryland Green Schools have had on the environment throughout Maryland. As you're planning or implementing a MWEE, what are your overall goals or objectives for learning? Do any of them relate to the statistics in this chart? So go ahead and add some more thoughts to the chat box. We've had composting, native plants, outdoor classrooms, edible gardens, stream cleaning, energy use reduction, water conservation.
Mary, can you repeat that question one more time?
Oh yeah, sure. So as you're planning or implementing your MWEE, what are your overall goals and objectives for learning, and do any of them relate to the statistics in this chart?
Perfect.
Or
thank you.
the topics in the chart?
So Todd's saying environmental literacy for all, so probably an equity piece. Yeah. Laura is saying student actions as a part of a MWEE.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Rain gardens, outdoor classrooms, invasive species removal. So it seems like there's some overlap, student action in the community.
Definitely. Hopefully this will trigger some thoughts for, MWEEs that you can implement in your school and how they're related. And last but not least, we have a Mayo resource library, and it's a great resource for environmental literacy information. It includes resources for local, state, and national green school programs, as well as environmental education. And over the past year, we have added resources for home-based environmental education, DEIJ, newsletters, as well as recordings and information from lunch and shares, which are hour-long topics that we were doing throughout the spring and summer that you can listen to and rewatch if you want, as well as some of the green school and leader information sessions that we held in October. So if you want to find out more, we have recordings and information about the application process in our resource library, as well as the EE collaboration meetings. And these are statewide meetings that you can listen to and learn about what's going on throughout the state of Maryland. So check it out if you get a chance, and it's mayo.org/resource library. All right, and I think that is my time. So I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any questions that came through that we can answer right now.
Yeah, we do have a couple here.
Okay.
So the first one is, you mentioned at the beginning, Mary, that kind of 50% goal for the state,
Yes.
which is a really exciting kind of goal that the state of Maryland has. Are there certain schools that are identified or prioritized, or is this really a voluntary program?
It's a voluntary program. We have more public schools right now than private schools, but anyone can apply. And if you have more questions about that, my email address is there at greenschools@mayo.org, and I can help you sort through that decision or get more information about that.
Perfect. And then in terms of like the sorts of carrots that might be there for applying for a green school. So you mentioned there's like the flag and there's a certain kind of cachet that comes with that. Is there any funding that's associated with being awarded as a green school, or how have you seen green schools kind of leverage that?
Right. So when schools become green schools, they talk to their administrators about some of those carbon footprint reductions that they see. So that's a definite bonus for becoming a green school. Funding specifically for green schools, we have different opportunities available depending on our funding and our grant writing that we, use with green schools. Some of the other, just those accolades, and I think just, that positive competition between schools and districts and schools in the neighborhood is also one of those benefits. But definitely looking at, how those sustainable practices impact school finances or school invoices and things like that.
Perfect. We have a number of questions, so I'm not sure that we're going to have time for all of them. So perhaps we can do a follow-up here, but there are two that are sticking out to me. One that Victoria is asking that I think maybe we'll hit at the end after Holly has a chance to present. But Todd's asking, why have state level green school programs kind of risen up, and why are we not just working towards US DOE green ribbon school? So I think that's a really good question to kind of give some context to like what these different sort of levels and the different expectations maybe for green schools are. Maybe you could just touch on that quickly, Mary.
Yeah, definitely. Eco schools, green ribbon schools, they're all related. If you become a green school, you can become an eco school. If you become a green school and an eco school, you can become a green ribbon school. So I think our world is changing rapidly. So that rise in acknowledgement of becoming green schools is part of that, looking at a more sustainable future. So not sure if that completely answers the question, but all three of those programs are tied together and have benefits and correlations and ties together between the three programs.
Can I just add really quickly, Elise, about the Green Ribbon program? And Holly may have something to add as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Green Ribbon School Program, which is the federal DOE program, Department of Education, is a program that really showcases model schools throughout the nation. What they encourage is that you participate in your local green school program or eco school program, and that those are programs that are going to have you cycling through actions on a year-to-year basis. The Green Ribbon program is a one-off program. Once you've achieved that, it does state that you are, that you have achieved quite a bit, but it's not an ongoing state program. It's a national recognition program.
Yeah, and to echo what Laura was saying, the Department of Education's Green Ribbon Schools program is only able to recognize a really limited number of schools each year. And obviously we understand that there's a lot more, amazing work that's happening at schools across our states and our region. So I think the other programs, the state level, programs really give that opportunity for all schools to get recognition for the work that they're putting in. And then certainly a subset can apply for the Department of Education's Green Ribbon Schools program. But as Laura mentioned, that's only a one-time award, and we don't like to think of green schools as a, you've done it and now check, you're done, you're a green school. It's really about the sustained engagement and activity, and there's new students and staff coming in all the time, so making sure that that is something that's systemic and embedded for the long term.
Great, thank you both for clarifying my original answer. So thank you for that. All right, Elise, any more, or should we continue?
I think we should continue for now, and I have a couple that we can talk about at the end if there's time.
Sounds good, great. And with that, I am going to introduce Hema Bhaskaran, and she is from the James M. Bennett High School in Wicomico County, and she's an environmental science teacher, and she's going to talk about her MWEEs at her school. So Hema, take it away.
Thank you, Mary. I want to first thank everyone for the opportunity to kind of showcase my school, James M. Bennett High, and how the MWEE that we are implementing as a school system and also as a school, how it plays into the Green School recertification. We are in our third year of Green School certification, and we have a year to actually get recertified. And I just want to take literally a minute to talk about what happened in 2015 when we started the process of Green School application. It actually took us 2 years to get everything organized, to build a team, to actually bring everyone around the school, to organize. And it was a lot of time, and it was a lot of effort, and it was a lot of juggling around. But interestingly, the year that we got the Green School certificate was the same year that the MWEE was rolled out countywide as a part of the environmental literacy requirement, the standard requirement. And since then, my world has been changed upside down personally as a teacher, and for the best, because now my students are actually having meaningful education experiences, and they're also getting these opportunities to showcase youth voice and youth action, and none of that would have been possible without the systemic MWEE implementation. So I have links to kind of showcase some of the things that have happened since 2017 at our school and also countywide. For the sake of time, I just picked out just a few things to highlight. So the very first thing that I want to kind of showcase is that at each grade level, elementary, middle, and high, throughout our county, we do have one meaningful educational experience. And for the 9th grade, environmental science and honors or advanced biology are the 2 sections that implement the MWEE. And every year, because of this countywide initiative, we have 400 students in just my school alone that have the opportunity to go out, participate in these meaningful educational experiences. And we have around 10 teachers just within our school who are participating every year actively through this program. So through this issue investigation, we're able to address the outdoor component, and that actually ties into our community partner, Ward Museum, who's our Green Center, who've helped us with the application process, are also our MWEE community partners. So we are able to implement a lot of the things that we were not able to before the system-wide MWEE initiative. And the first link that was shared in the chat, it actually shows pretty much what our students, the freshman class, does. So that's the first part. The second thing that I want to personally kind of address, and I know Mary mentioned this very briefly, is the professional development. That was the biggest hurdle to cross when we applied for the Green School, because we didn't have funding. We had to juggle so many things around to get 10% of our faculty trained. And teachers are always busy to find people to come and attend workshops and to find funding to entice them. It was just too much of a hassle. And luckily, now we have MWEE 101, which is all virtual. It is self-paced. And we as a school are talking about, and again as a county-wide, talking about using this as one of the PD opportunities that we can, number one, provide to all teachers across the curriculum, not just the science teachers, but this is also free, it's available, and this is something that would actually help us achieve those PD goals that are set for the Green School certification. And one of the beautiful things that happened is highlighted in the third link, 1.3.1, the sustainable school, school-wide environment behavior change. This is something that came out as a MWEE that just the science teachers, the environmental science teachers, we just sat and planned a unit. And when we were planning the unit, we just brainstormed and said, what if we make this MWEE like? And the planning actually started that way. And before we knew it, we pretty much built a unit around plastic use. And this handout that you see was created by one of my colleagues. He no longer works with our school, but he actually came up with this like literally one-page document that we were able to share throughout the entire school, where kids brought in a plastic that they used. They actually brought in some information that was related to plastic pollution. And we literally decorated our entire hallway with all the plastics that were collected by individual students from the school. And also we were able to showcase some of the information that the students were able to collect. So this is a product of something that was done as a result of just going through the process of MWEE. So it's now become kind of second nature when we plan, when we sit down to write curriculum, like how can we build in those MWEE components? And that's kind of something we're doing school-wide. And our central office has been key. They are actually supporting the MWEE initiative. And there is a link that says Sustainable Schools 1.3.2. And that actually showcases not just my school, but it showcases all the MWEE initiatives that are happening at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And we do have elementary schools that are green schools. We do have middle and high schools that are also green schools that actually kind of showcase how it actually works system-wide. So things are a lot more easier now because it's easier for us to get permission now that we have buy-in from the central office. And that actually brings me to the most important part of this MWEE Green School partnership, and personally for me as a teacher, it is how the blend between the community and the school is beautifully done. I have to thank War Museum for everything that they do for us, both MWEE-wise and with supporting our Green School. And I also want to thank the Youth Environmental Action Summit, which is basically providing our students platforms to analyze local environmental issues, find some ways to address those issues, and also provide funding for the students. And the application for the Youth Environmental Action Summit, it's pretty much set up like a MWEE, where the students have to look at the issue, they have to go outside, investigate it, write down, like synthesize conclusions, and then they actually present a solution. And I actually included a video. This is not a student that I taught. I'm looking forward to teaching him in the spring. But he actually did a project as a part of the Youth Environmental Action Summit that focuses on habitat restoration. And that's going to be definitely a part of our application going in for the recertification. And that would not have happened without community partners like the War Museum and the Youth Environmental Action Summit. And now that things are virtual, I want to actually thank a few other community partners who've actually stepped up and gone above and beyond. And one organization that I have to thank to kind of make those meaningful connections even in the virtual world is the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. They have what is called online Watershed learning, where educators from a CBF, they come into the class virtually. They have 6 big topics, and within each of those topics, they actually have different, a lot of lessons. And as a teacher, I have the ability to go in and pick and choose what lesson and what topic I want the CBF educators to come in and present to my students. And the CBF educators, when they present, they pretty much follow the MWEE, the environmental literacy plan almost. So they are able to come into the class and not only present the issues, but for every issue that they present, they're also able to talk about student action, action that is at the individual level, action that can actually translate to the community level. And this summer, I had the unique opportunity to be a part of a MWEE Academy through Shore Rivers. And again, now that things are virtual, they are so willing to work with me and my students to still have these meaningful experiences in a virtual world. None of this would have been possible, or none of it was possible in 2017 before our entire county went in through the MWEE process. And because of that, now when we go for the recertification, it's going to be much more easier for us to not only have individual buy-in, but a system-wide buy-in for the entire process. All of those links, I think, should be accessible. If you have any questions, I know I talked really fast. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. All right, we are going to continue, unless Elise, there are quick questions that can be answered, or we can wait until the end because I want to make sure that Holly and Riley have their presentation.
Yeah, let's, I think that we should wait till the end. That'd be great.
Sounds good. All right. Holly and Riley, I'm going to mute myself again and I will advance your slides.
So hi, everyone. As I mentioned earlier in our introductions, my name is Riley Cassidy and I'm with the National Wildlife Federation. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about Eco Schools USA, which is our Green Schools program. So the National Wildlife Federation's Eco Schools USA is a holistic, standards-aligned program that strives to make environmental awareness and action an intrinsic part of the life and culture of a school. It focuses on providing accessible step-by-step processes and guides to help schools, curricula, and student experiences be more sustainable. Thank you. So the NWF's Eco Schools USA program is in its 11th year of supporting schools across the country. We have over 5,000 registered schools now in every single state of the US. Go on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the program benefits, but there's more information on the website if you want to provide some to the school or parent community. But a few of them I wanted to highlight are that Eco Schools is aligned with NGSS and Common Core standards. The program is also intended to be very student-driven, so it's supported by adults, but students are the ones who are really driving the actions at their school. And this can happen at any grade level, kindergarten through high school. And then it's also very place-based, so students are assessing what's happening at their school, as well as creating a plan of action and implementing that plan. So here I'm going to talk about a little bit of the background of Eco Schools, and we're not going to show this video, but like they said earlier, the presentation will be shared, so I would encourage you to go back and check out this video if you have time. But just for a little bit of history, since 2009, NWF has been the US host for the International Eco Schools program, which is the largest green school program in the world. And the Eco Schools program was started in 1994 by the Foundation for Environmental Education with support by the European Commission. And it was identified by the United Countries Environment Program as a model initiative for education for sustainable development in 2003. It is currently in practice in 69 nations and is aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So here are some of the statistics internationally, just to give you a sense of when your school participates in this program, you're really a part of a much larger international community. And these statistics are coming from a few years ago, so the numbers are even larger now. But there are 69 countries now engaged in Eco Schools across the globe, with over 52,000 registered schools, over 19 million students, and 1.3 million teachers engaged. So the program is structured with 3 main elements. The first is a 7-step framework. Then we have 12 pathways to sustainability that your school can choose to pursue. And then we have a 3-tiered cumulative awards process that you can move forward with and get additional levels of recognition. So like I just mentioned, the EcoSchools program is based on a 7-step framework, which is really the backbone of the program. And you can see here that the steps are written in a linear fashion, but they're not necessarily linear in nature, so they can overlap or happen at the same time. And the first step is to form an eco-action team. This team is the driving force behind the EcoSchools process and involves a wide diversity of individuals from the school community, with students playing the primary role. For the second step, we have the environmental audit, and this helps the school to identify its current environmental impact and highlights area for improvement. Then we have the eco-action plan, and for the steps, the results from the environmental audit are used to design the action plan, which forms the core of student action. And then we have monitor and evaluate, and this is carried out to find out if the targets set by the action plan are being achieved. For step 5, we have the curriculum work, and EcoSchools activities are linked to the curriculum, ensuring that EcoSchools is truly integrated within the school community. So this is not intended to be something extra. It's supposed to elevate the work that you're already doing in your classroom. Step 6, we have involve the community. This involves getting everyone on board. The actions are not solely confined to the school community. We encourage, community members and parents, or even outside community members, to get involved. And also community engagement can happen at every step in the process. So parents or outside community members could be a part of the green team. They could help with the audit or the action plan or anything along those lines. And then the 7th and final step is the eco code. And this is for students to collaborate to devise a statement or an image or a song or something along those lines that represents the school's commitment to the environment. So it's something that shows the entire community, not just the green team, that the school is an eco school and what that means. And so here, you don't have to follow these lines, but this just shows what I was explaining earlier, that while the framework is defined as steps, and steps typically infer a linear path, it's not linear in nature. A school's path through the framework will look different at each school. There could be many similarities, but each will with their own unique flow. However, it is recommended that you start with an eco-action team as your first step. So here we have the 12 pathways or themes to sustainability, and this should cover anything related to greening your school that you and your students want to pursue. A lot of the pathways are going to overlap and intersect, but I do want to mention that if you're working on a MWEE, your school will likely, or your work will likely intersect with any work you do on any of the pathways you choose. So you can see on the bottom right, one of our pathways is the Watersheds, Oceans, and Wetlands pathway, otherwise known as WOW. And this is obviously connected to MWEE, but some additional pathways that could relate to a MWEE in some way could be water or climate change, biodiversity, or schoolyard habitats. So here we have an example audit for the Watersheds pathway, and all sample audits are available on our website. The audits are being updated, and currently almost all the pathways have been updated. So the new audits are grade banded. We have K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. They address the Sustainable Development Goals and our alignment with the GLOBE program, and are made up of 3 parts, which are getting started, the baseline audit, and the post-action audit. So we also have some blank sample action plans on our website, and this is the first page of an example watershed action plan. The action plans basically just cover the what, the when, the where, and the how of what you want to implement at your school, and they are available for each pathway. So going on to awards, we want to make sure that your school is getting recognition for being part of the program, and any school is welcome to sign up for free on our website. Use all of the resources on our website, document your progress, and schools are not required to apply for an award, but it is a nice opportunity to get recognition for the work that you're doing at your school. So we have 3 levels of awards. The first is bronze, then silver, and finally the green flag. And the bronze award corresponds to completing 1 pathway, the silver is completing 2 pathways, and the green flag is completing 3 pathways. And if you're working on several pathways, you are welcome to apply for the green flag starting off, or you could start with the bronze and work your way up. And we do encourage schools who are just getting started to really focus on 1 pathway and make sure you're doing it well. But if your school is doing a lot of sustainable things already and has green schools programming, then you might be ready to apply for the silver or green flag. And then our current policy under the Eco Schools program is that a green flag award is good for only 2 years, and then the school has to reapply. And then reapplying 4 times makes them a lifelong eco school. And they can continue to make progress on the same pathways, or they can choose new pathways. And then finally, we've got some virtual educational resources available on our website. We have at-home activities like a virtual wildlife photography field trip, a biodiversity assessment, a birdwatching lesson. We have a YouTube channel that features a bunch of guest speakers. We have nature-inspired arts and crafts, and the family and parent guides to accompany Ranger Rec magazine, which is free digitally right now. And then we also have several Eco School at-home audits and action plans that make it easy for you to work through them at home.
Thank you, Riley. So I'm going to jump in now and just talk a little bit more about the MWEE and how that aligns with Eco Schools USA. I know it sounds like from the polling earlier that a number of you are involved in MWEEs and maybe not involved in any green schools programs. So here we have an alignment of the 2 different programs. So as you can see, there is a significant amount of overlap between the MWEE steps or the MWEE essential elements and supporting practices and the Eco Schools 7-step framework. So if you are already part of a MWEE, you would easily be able to adapt that in order to be able to apply for the Eco Schools Award, at least the first tier, the bronze award that Riley mentioned. And if you're in the process of developing a MWEE or developing something new, we would encourage you to think about sort of aligning Eco Schools with that and working through the Eco Schools process at the same time. So in order for us to grant an award through Eco Schools, we ask you to submit like the actual audit and the action plan and evidence of student work. But you could easily incorporate that with some of your MWEE planning and what students are going to already be doing. So as you can see here, a couple that I want to highlight, the outdoor field experience and synthesis and conclusions can be tied really clearly to conducting that audit, where we already have some of those documents created for you, and you're welcome to kind of tweak them if you need for your own use. The stewardship and civic action piece of a MWEE is also really a critical part of Eco Schools, and that comes into play with creating the Eco Action Plan and monitoring and evaluating progress. And again, all of that is meant to be student driven, so the student voice piece is really critical. And then classroom integration, we highly encourage Eco Schools to be integrated into, using curriculum that already exists and integrated with that curriculum. And then finally, as I mentioned before, these green schools programs are meant to be something that is representative of a sustained activity. So just like a MWEE, it's not a one and done field experience that you're doing with your students. It's really something that's becoming embedded in, the environmental literacy education and the curriculum and the culture of the entire school. And then again, local context. So whether you're doing this right now at your school or at home, as Riley mentioned, we do have resources and audits and action plans available for students who are learning virtually right now and focus more on the home community than the school community. And I think the MWEE is the same way, has created some adaptive resources given our new virtual learning environment for many schools and students. But still there's that emphasis on the local context and involving the local community. And then next slide, Mary. Just want to highlight some of those key similarities. So the investigations and the assessments align really nicely. You are asking students to go out and do some of those audits or investigations, again, whether it's on their school property or not, that there is some sort of action piece that students are driving, that they have a voice in that, that it is a sustained activity impacting their local environment, and again, that there's teacher and stakeholder support. And something else really important about eco-schools is sort of that interdisciplinary connection. I know that that was a question that came up in the chat, and we really do encourage anyone who's pursuing eco-schools or pursuing a MWEE to think about it from an interdisciplinary context and not just from the sciences. Based on what you've heard today, if there's any other things that are coming to mind in terms of similarities, or if you have a MWEE and you've heard things about green schools and eco-schools, I would encourage you to put those in the chat so we can capture them and share them with others as well if you think there's anything that stands out to you that we might have missed. And then if you have any questions, I think we have about 9 minutes left for questions before we wrap up. So any questions for Riley and myself, or for the rest of us who presented today? And that's our contact information if you do want to follow up.
Thanks, Holly. We do have a number of questions here, and I'll give folks a couple more minutes to type in if you have one that hasn't been shared yet. I did want to just acknowledge David made a great suggestion of, there's an opportunity for the Eco Code to actually be a start off maybe as a stewardship and civic action example as part of the MWEE. That's a great reminder to us there. You mentioned this briefly, so this is kind of the question that's on everybody's mind right now, and we've done a webinar previously on how MWEEs have kind of changed due to remote learning, but I'm curious, could you guys dig in a little bit more on how eco schools and how Mayo Green schools are adapting during this very challenging time? Are you expecting the same number of applications? What are you doing to kind of support people along the way, recognizing that it's just a very different year?
Yeah, I can jump in first. So we are adapting all of the audits and action plans for each pathway to be used at home. So on our website, you can find those. They're called Eco Schools at Home Audits and Action Plans. And they are tweaked so that it's things that students can do, in their local community, and also in some cases without even leaving their house. Understanding that, for all students, it's not necessarily safe or easy to access the outdoors from home. So we have created those, and schools can still go through the process of becoming an eco school and get an award using those audits and action plans and having students work in the home context. And we're in the process of developing some additional resources as well, understanding that, this is going on for quite some time, and it's important for the programs to be flexible right now. Mary, you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So for our Green Schools applications, we actually have COVID-19 modifications for this year's application. We've made some of the application objectives optional. So those are things that things that can't be completed at home. So some of the school-based objectives. For the student-driven sustainability objectives, objective 2, we've looked at the at-home option, same as what Holly was talking about, things that can be done at school or at home, sorry. And we're asking, for fewer documentation notations, basically having 10 students do that action. So those actions and that modification is on our website, and there's a whole list of them. So we have adapted to the current situation for this application.
Perfect. We have a question here for Hema, who I believe is still on with us. Where do you think where is the easier starting point for schools? Is it with a Green Schools or Eco Schools application, or is it with MWEEs? Maybe from your perspective as a teacher. And then what have you heard from administrators about how these, it's easier to kind of dig in and start these efforts, MWEEs versus Eco Schools?
This is just a personal reflection. For me personally, I would say now that we have a school-wide MWEE, it's so much easier to, number one, bring a team together because it's a county-wide initiative. There's more buy-in from admin. So anything that we say is part of the MWEE, we're getting approval faster than before. So having the MWEE has definitely helped things a lot. But I think it truly depends on the school. It truly depends on the administrators and where they are at. So personally, I would say having the MWEE definitely makes it easier.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and my perspective on that question is a little bit like it kind of depends if a school's already down the path of a green school or an eco schools certification. Certainly either one lends itself really well to the other. So that's a really good question. Another one here. So we've had Todd brought up the green ribbon schools, and then we had a question about Project Learning Trees green schools. There's so many green schools programs. Where is there any sort of like matrix, or like how do you identify like what the similarities and what the differences are, and how does a school kind of choose which of these green schools programs to pursue?
So we do have a matrix, at least for Eco Schools, Maryland Green Schools, and the Department of Education Green Ribbon Schools program that actually shows how many similarities there are. And for at least those three programs, we talk about it in terms of the state level recognition, the national recognition, and the international recognition, and how you can, work along a continuum to get those different awards. We do find that a lot of schools, pursue multiple awards, maybe not at the same time, but like to pursue one and then work towards another one. In terms of how PLT fits in, I think that was part of the question. I'm not familiar enough with the ins and outs of their program to align it with Eco Schools at this time, but I think if there's questions about it, I could certainly ask some of my colleagues if they have any, matrices or something that they could share. Mary, do you have anything?
Holly.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We are the state coordinators. Mayo is the state coordinators for PLT in Maryland. So you can certainly direct questions to me at greenschools@mayo.org. And we aren't involved in the PLT Green Schools, but we can definitely see if we can get you some more information about that program too.
Perfect. If we could just flip to the last slide, because we have 2 minutes left, I just want to kind of wrap up here with a couple of quick announcements. And I know there were a couple of other questions in the chat, so I'm not sure if Mary, Riley, Holly, Hema can stick around for just a few minutes, maybe after 4, and answer any that are pressing. But otherwise, you do have their contact information in these slides. And as always, the recordings will be posted on the Chesapeake Bay Program's YouTube page. So just 2 quick announcements, and you probably saw this in my email already, but I did want to let everyone know that Chesapeake BWET is now open. You can find the NOFO on grants.gov. We have a long application period this year to hopefully allow time for partnerships and connections to happen during this interesting year that we're in. And there are 2 priority areas. So the one that we kind of always have, systemic MWEEs, of course, and you'll see that there are a couple of tools in there in the NOFO itself to help us maybe identify some areas that organizations might be interested in working in. And then we have a brand new priority area, which is district capacity building. And so this is really supporting the structures for creating systemic MWEEs. There are some examples that are in there, but this is a kind of new place that we haven't really, a new kind of opportunity that we haven't extended before. And it is, given the circumstances that we're in again this year. So take a look at both of those. And for both of those priority areas, we have a special interest area with community partnerships. So supporting organizations and community-based organizations that either represent or are working with specifically BIPOC communities. So we are really excited about that. And if anybody has any questions, you can reach out directly to us. And the link to that NOFO is in the email that I sent out. Last but not least, just a reminder about our next webinar, January 20th at 3:30. This will be on benefits and outreach for green infrastructure. I think it's going to be a really exciting one. And as always, if you have any ideas for future webinars, please reach out to us, and we are glad to take those. So thanks everyone so much for joining us. It is 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. We'll stick around for a few more questions, but otherwise, thank you so much.
Thanks, bye.